Hey you guys, and welcome to the weekly live stream. Wherever you are watching, welcome. If you're watching this on Facebook, if you're watching this on Instagram, welcome to the weekly live stream. I do this every week on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time. So so I'm so glad you're here. I'm just going to quickly share this video into the Leather Tamers Facebook group, so that we are broadcasting in all of the places. If you're not a member yet of the Leather Tamers, join us. It's a free Facebook group, and it's all about how to start a leather business, how to improve your leather business, just how to, all of the things, the day-to-day things that come with running a leather business, running a handmade product-based leather business. So you can join us at the Leather Tamers in the on Facebook. So now we are everywhere. Hi everyone. Hey Rob. And today's topic, I'm excited about this topic because I love this topic. And this topic, which is pricing, is one of the top things that you guys told me that you struggle with in that survey that I asked you to help me with a couple of weeks ago. It was I would say one of the top 3 things when I asked, what is your number one struggle? What is your number one struggle that you have right now in your business? And yeah, so many of you said pricing or some sort of pricing related struggle. So I thought, why not create a blog post and do a video on this? So today we're talking about pricing your leather goods, and I'm going to share with you my ultimate 2-step strategy for pricing in a way that makes sense for your leather goods business. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mary, and I'm the creator of leatherbeast.com. I work with leather crafters just like you and help you go from no sales to consistent sales month after month, and really how to create a successful and profitable leather goods business, making consistent sales. So how do I do that? I do that in 3 different ways. I help you get past the 3 most common mistakes. I help you to get clear on what you have to offer your customer and how to talk about it, how to get in front of your customer and actually determine who your customer is, and how to drive traffic to your website using marketing methods that really work. So now if any of that sounds interesting to you, I do have a free workshop right now. It's called How to 5X Your Leather Goods Business, and you can click the link in the description anywhere around this video, or just head over to lucrativeleathercraft.com. It's a free workshop. It's about an hour long, and I go deep. I dive deep into these 3 areas. So you'll get a lot of value out of that if that's something that you need help with. Now, before we jump into today's topic, the ultimate pricing strategy, I want to share this week's friendly comment and review. Allie says, "Oh my God, OMG, I am literally crying listening to you. I have my leather business and work it full time. It is my absolute passion, and I can't imagine doing anything else, but I am rubbish at running the business and feel stuck a lot of the time with the paperwork side and the planning, etc. I can't believe how much it feels so good to have listened to you, and will be binge watching today for more help." Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Peter Gosling, for the introduction. I am so grateful. That's awesome. Thanks, Allie. That's such a nice thing to say. Okay, guys, let's get into it. So, like I said, one of the biggest challenges, and you guys told me this in your own words, that you are having is pricing your work. And it's a challenge for a good reason. I totally get this, because there's so many different ways that you can price your leather goods. You can use a sort of a top-down approach where you're really plugging in your production cost and staying right to that, plugging it into the formulas and not really straying from that. You can use a value-based approach where it's more based on the perceived value of what you're selling and not just on the actual costs that go into it. But determining which of these strategies, and then of course there's all kinds of hybrids in between that that you can use as well, but determining what strategy you will use in your business really depends on a couple of things. It depends on your business model, it depends on your products, it depends on your customer, and you really have to know who you are serving, because that's kind of the definition of your ideal customer, right? It's someone who values your work and they have the money to buy, right? That's like those, it's a two-parter there. And then there's also the tons of people on YouTube and on blogs all over the internet, and they're all telling you that their way to price is the best way to price. But all of that conflicting info, that can be pretty confusing, right? Have you ever been confused by all of the different ways? I have, because I've looked it up and I'm like, wait, this guy's saying one thing, this guy's saying another thing. I'm confused. So it's like, who should you believe? Which pricing method is actually right for you and your business? That's the key to the question. It's all about you and your business. And the stakes are high, right? Because obviously you don't want to be pricing your product in a way that's going to offend or turn people off, and you don't want to lose sales with a really high price, but you also don't want to like price your product so low that you're just breaking even and you're not making a profit, and you're also, you know, that doesn't really look great if you're trying to attract a certain audience, maybe a higher end clientele. If your products are priced like super low, that it just doesn't work. So there's got to be an in-between, right, where you can create competitive pricing that's also going to be sustainable for your leather business. So this is the solution. This is the key. The solution is to calculate your base price by using actual numbers, meaning your production cost, your materials and labor costs, and then adjusting that base price accordingly when taking into consideration your specific business and business model and customer. So let's break that down a little bit, but let me tell you first what that helps you to do when you do it that way. So pricing this way ensures that you have profit built into your price, that your base production expenses are covered, like your materials cost, all your leather, your thread, your hardware, everything that goes into actually producing the item. Your labor costs are covered. It also allows you to have a price that also works for wholesaling your goods. So you can still wholesale your goods, give that wholesale price to the store, and you're still going to be making a profit from that without having to raise your prices on your loyal customers, you know. And most importantly, it ensures that you have profit to grow and scale the business in the future. That's a really important part, obviously, of building a sustainable leather business. So I'm going to go through my two-step strategy for calculating your base price and then analyzing that base price and sort of tweaking it to meet your needs. Ready? Okay, so step one is to gather your production costs. So at the most basic level, you need to know three main things to determine your base product price. You need to know what your materials costs are, what your labor costs are, and how long it takes you to make the leather good. Actually, you need to know your materials cost, your hourly rate for your labor, and how long it takes you to make the leather good. Right? So materials costs, that's like the cost of your leather, how much thread, wax, if you're including those things, how much hardware costs, everything else. You should only be counting the actual materials that you're using in this product to produce the product. So you're not including any sort of overhead costs in this product. That all kind of comes out of your overall profit, and that's kind of a separate calculation. One thing I was going to say is that I do have another article. I can link to that in the notes for this video, but I do have another article all about really nailing down those three costs: your materials, your labor, and how long it takes. Because sometimes people have a hard time figuring out their labor, their hourly labor. So I have a couple of tips for that. But one of the biggest things that you need to know is, what is your time worth? So there's a lot of different ways to think about this, and a lot of different factors that come into play with this, like things like your geographical location. So I'm in New York City, so the labor cost here, everything is just more expensive here, you know? So it's like I'm gonna have to pay probably twice as much to find someone to help me do the work here as I would if I went back to my hometown in like Pennsylvania or something, you know? So that makes a difference. The skill level and, you know, just what kind of experience you want the person to have. All of this kind of is something that is really going to guide that hourly rate. Now you want to think about these things even if you're like a one-person show. You're the only one that is doing the cutting, the sewing, the assembling. You do everything. You still want to think about it in terms of, if I had to hire this job out, if I had to hire out what I did to create this leather handbag, how much would that cost? Because eventually that's going to happen, right? If you are a leather business that is going to grow, you're probably eventually going to need to hire someone. And then the time spent producing. So you really need to know how long that it takes to make your leather goods. And have you made it a few times? Make sure you've made it a few times and you're using that time. You're not using the time, you're not saying like, oh, I just made this thing and it took me like 5 hours to make because I was also designing it at the same time and fixing little issues. You want to have made it like a handful of times so that you really have the design down, and you're using that time frame instead of the initial time frame, because it's obviously going to get easier and easier the more you make it. Okay, so that's step one, is gathering those costs and making a note of those costs. So step two is running the numbers and analyzing. This is kind of like a two-parter. So part A would be running the numbers and part B is analyzing. So running the numbers just means sort of using some formulas and plugging in the numbers and seeing what you get. So I use the two standard simple calculations. And some people will say, oh, well, you shouldn't use those because it doesn't take into consideration this and that and this and that. But that's where the analyzing part comes in. Once you get your base price out of these formulas, then you can tweak it. So we'll get there. So the two calculations are for your wholesale and your retail price. So your wholesale formula is you take your materials costs plus your labor costs and then times that by 2. And I'll do an example in a second. And then for the retail, you just take your wholesale and you times that by 2. Whatever your wholesale cost was from that initial formula, just times that by 2, and that's your retail price. So let's use the following for an example, and I've used whole numbers here, so hopefully this math isn't too confusing over the video here. So let's say I'm going to make a leather handbag, and my materials cost for the bag is $35. That's my leather, my hardware, and whatever else went into it. And then my labor cost is $60. Let's just say that it takes me 3 hours to make this bag at $20 an hour. So it's $60. So this is how I'm getting my final results. I'm plugging those two numbers into my wholesale pricing formula. So I'm taking my materials cost plus my labor cost. That gives me $95. And then I'm timesing that by 2. That gives me a wholesale price of $190 for this leather handbag. And now my retail price, I'm just timesing that by 2. So 190 times 2 is 380. So that's going to be my base retail price for this handbag. Okay, so now part B of step 2 is to analyze this data and make some choices. I have about 3 different pricing choices here. So option 1, I can take that retail price as is and just go forth and price my handbag at $380 for retail and call it a day. You know what? Done. This is top-down pricing because I'm using the cost of production as my guide and as my sort of end-all, be-all. That's option 1. Option 2 is I can decide that I need my retail price to be a little bit higher, actually, because my audience is in a luxury market. I'm really serving those people that expect a high-end product, a high-end service, high-end customer service, high-end website presence, high-end branding. Like, they want the top of the line. So if I give them a handbag for $380, they're going to be like, no, I don't want that. There must be something wrong with it. It's not expensive enough. You know what I mean? So this is more like perceived value. This is more value-based pricing. And this is considered value-based pricing. And what I actually want to price my product as in this instance is up to what I feel like the perceived value is and what my audience expects. So there's room in here to kind of to improvise a little bit on the price. So maybe you want to double it, maybe you want to triple it. You want to look at what other handbag makers in your market that have the same customer are pricing. There's a lot of different specific ways you can get into value-based pricing. We don't really have time to go into all of that today, but just so you know, that's kind of how you can come at that pricing strategy. And then option 3 is that I can decide that the base price of $380 for this handbag is a little too high for my ideal customer. So I need to find a way to cut my labor or materials costs to bring that retail price down. So I'm not just cutting into the price, even though I know that the price is too high. I'm not just like slashing it right away. I first want to go in and say, okay, can I make this bag faster? Is there some sort of step or some sort of design element that I can get rid of without, you know, making the bag, you know, less quality or taking away from the design, but that could bring down that labor cost? Or can I source a new source for hardware that's cheaper or leather that's a better price? Can I buy in bulk? You know, something like that can bring that price down without having to cut into your profit. Or you can decide that, okay, I am going to slash this price. There's no way for me to make this bag cheaper. There's no way for me to get materials that are cheaper. So I am going to cut into this price a little bit and bring it down by 10% to $340, because that to me seems like a more reasonable price for my customers that they will pay for. But just know that that 10% has to come from somewhere. So that is coming out of your profit, and you have to be mindful that as you cut this price, your margin is shrinking. So it's ultimately up to you. Let me just read this comment from Devil Leatherworks. Step 1 is where I am usually stuck at. What is the fair range for labor rate? And how do I price the leather used? Let's say I get a full size for $220, but I only use a small amount of that. Good question. So for your first question, what is a fair range for labor rate? So again, it really depends on your location, the skill level. Like, what are you having the person do? Are they just going to be doing something that is less skilled, or are they going to be, you know, drafting patterns for you? Are they going to be doing the stitching versus, you know, just packaging your materials and shipping them out? So it really depends on what they're doing, what the skill level is, and, you know, where you live. Like I said, I live in New York City, so I'm going to have to pay, you know, double, quadruple what I would have to pay someone for labor somewhere else, like in a small town like in Pennsylvania or something where I'm from. So it really depends on that. But you can ask around, or you can just one thing that I have done before is I've posted an ad on Craigslist as if I'm going to be hiring someone, and I've taken a guess at the rate, and I'm like, okay, if I get 0 responses, then I know that my hourly rate is probably a little low. If I get some responses, then I know that I'm sort of in the range of the hourly rate. So that's one way to go about it. And then your second question about getting a full side for $220, but you only use a small amount of that. So what you need to do there is you need to break down your leather hide by how much per square foot, and then obviously know how much per handbag. So take, for example, my leather handbag that I just used in this example. Say I need 3 square feet. Well, I probably need more than that. 6 square feet for this bag. And say your $220 hide gives you 20 square feet. So you need to know how big that is. And most places when you purchase the leather, they'll tell you at least a range, like somewhere between 22 and 24 square feet. So know that, and then you can divide your purchase price by the amount of square feet and then get the price per square foot. And then you take that price per square foot, times it by how much you need for your product. And that's how you get your leather cost for that product. Great question. Okay, so it's ultimately up to you how to price your leather goods. So everybody that says my way to price is the best way, maybe parts of it are, but you really have to think about your own business. Every business is going to be different. Everybody has a different kind of customer. And like with everything with your handmade business, it's all about your customer. It's all about who you are serving. So you really need to take that into consideration. You need to take into consideration that your production costs are covered, that you have profit built in, so that you're building that sustainable business that has money in it to grow. Because the other part of your profit, and maybe I can do a video about this in the future, but the other part of that profit, which is why it needs to have a pretty decent margin, is because your overhead expenses are going to be pooling from that as well. So if you were thinking that you get that whole chunk just to take home and put in the bank, there are other expenses that are non-production related expenses that have to come out of that. But regardless, if you have a lower end product, a higher end product, you really should run the numbers so that you are ensuring that you're covering your costs and you're making a profit. And then once you've run those numbers, you can analyze and see what you want to do as far as using actual top-down pricing or perceived value pricing for your leather business. So that's it, you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Feel free to share this video with on your timeline on Facebook, or anybody else that is a fellow leather worker and you think it might be helpful for them. Leave a comment. Join the Leather Tamers if you want to, get in and talk to other people who are starting businesses. Thank you everybody on Instagram for joining me. And upcoming posts, I have some really great topics coming up. Next week, I'm talking about 3 ways to find your customer that wants what you're selling. Yay. I have a time management post coming up, profitable leather goods to make and sell coming up, 5 ways to get over imposter syndrome. We got some good stuff coming up over the next few weeks, so I can't wait. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye Facebook. I will see you guys later.